Hi everybody, I'm Tony E at Show IP Interface Brief. Today is day 63. It is about 11:30 p.m. my time. And tonight I've been working on dual mutual redistribution. And I find redistribution to be a confusing subject, especially in the CCIE prep labs that I've been doing as of late. I'm very tired right now, so I am like ready for bed. But I got my labbing in today. Look, it's 11:30 p.m. I'm tired. I worked all day, just like the rest of you. I labbed all night, just like the rest of you. I'm tired, but I got my labbing in. No matter how tired you get your labbing in. Anyhow, I'm here, day 63. The mutual redistribution, redistribution in general has always been a sort of trouble topic for me in my labs, just because there's so many protocols in so much small space. You know, there's only like 10 routers, and I'm redistributing 6 protocols. It's in 8 places, and it can be a lot. It really can be a lot. And for me specifically, it actually gets very confusing. I'm trying to keep track of all of it in my head, going, okay, I redistributed this prefix from here into this protocol, and trying to understand how that's going to be affected down the line, and are we going to have a loop and all this. So I've been sort of putting myself through the paces on a couple of smaller redistribution focus labs. One of them was the Redistribute Connected, which I did in day 61. Day 61. Go back and watch that 61 video. That's a good one. Actually, I don't know if it was day 61 or 62 or 60 or whatever. One of the recent ones. I had a problem and in one video, and then I solved it in the next. So anyhow, I'm going to just do a quick whiteboard session just to introduce the sort of problem here. I don't know if this will be hugely beneficial because I didn't actually finish the lab today. But this comes from some Cisco documentation. All right, so we have a couple of routers. This is router 1, 2, 3, and 4, and they are connected via a multi-access segment on this side and serial links on this side. So what we're going to do is introduce a you can't read that. RIP routing domain. And I should put in here that there is some loopbacks here. There's a loopback here, loopback here, loopback here. I just threw in some loopbacks so I can practice redistributing external stuff. And then all of this is going to be, excuse me, let me try and draw that more accurately. And this is going to be OSPF. So there's a couple of redistribution problems here, right? When you redistribute RIP in both locations, those RIP prefixes get translated into OSPF prefixes, and they get advertised to router 1. And these prefixes get advertised, converted from RIP prefixes to OSPF prefixes, and get advertised over to router 1 this way. Router 1 sends the prefixes down this way, sends the prefixes down this way. And they're received here on router 2 and received here on router 3. So what that means is now router 3 thinks the best path to get to router 4's loopback is this way to router 2, because the administrative distance of OSPF is 110 and RIP is 120. So even though router 3 has both in its routing table, or not both in its routing table, but should have a path to both, obviously the lower administrative distance is going to prevail. So it's always going to take the OSPF path, and the same thing for router 2, right? And so what happens is, if I can erase some of this off of here, my little doodles. What happens in this scenario, at least what I was seeing was, router 3 is advertising. I'm just going to focus on this loopback. This loopback is the target that we want to watch. Router 4 is advertising it out, and router 2 is receiving it, and router 3 is receiving it. Router 3 converts it from RIP to OSPF and advertises it to router 1. And it becomes sort of a race condition, I think. And router 1 receives it and sends it back down to router 2, and router 2 installs it in its routing table. Now we take the OSPF prefixes and we redistribute them. We're doing mutual redistribution both ways. Router 2 is taking that OSPF prefix that it learned, redistributing it into RIP. It's being advertised from here over to router 3. Router 3 converts RIP back into OSPF, and it goes round and round and round and round and round and round this circle, right? And then if you come over here to router 4 and you shut down that loopback interface, you go interface loopback 0 and shut it down, router 3 is still receiving the loopback address of router 4 from router 2. It converts it to OSPF, advertises it outbound to router 1. Router 1 advertises it to router 2. Router 2 converts it to RIP, advertises it over to router 3. Router 3, and this just goes on in a circle forever, even though the prefix is not reachable anymore, even though you can't even get to it on router 4. It goes on forever. So I'm trying to backpedal my way through these marks here. Anyhow, so that was one of the things I was doing today, and one of the things to keep in mind, and I didn't get through this lab entirely, right? I'm just sort of exploring what's the different behavior when I do certain things here. So one of the focus ideas that I'm trying to keep in mind is because I see this sort of redistribution problem all the time in the CCIE lab, prep labs that I do. All the time I see this. And it's often very puzzling, sort of, it'll give you tasks. It'll say, do mutual redistribution between OSPF and RIP on router 2 and router 3. And that's exactly what we have here. So you go ahead and do it, not thinking that anything is going to be wrong. And so that's part of my training, is being able to see a topology, read the requirements, and be able to know ahead of time, hey, this is going to cause a loop, and here's what I need to look out for. And then how do I fix it? So one of the things to keep in mind, one of the theories or ideas to keep in mind, is you should always prefer the originating protocol, right? And what that means is, instead of router 4 taking its prefix, advertising it via RIP to router 3 and router 2, and router 2 converting that, doing redistribution into OSPF on both sides, it gets sent up to router 1. Router 1 takes it, sends it this way, sends it this way. They receive it, and both of them think that OSPF is the better path to reach router 4's loopback, which is actually down here. So what they're doing is router 2 and router 3 are not preferring the originating protocol, right? They're preferring the redistributed protocol. We're being redistributed into OSPF. So how do you make RIP have a better preference over OSPF? You have to do that via administrative distance. And so one of the things is you can either set the administrative distance lower for RIP altogether, maybe make it 109, which is lower than 110, which is lower than OSPF, which means any prefixes that router 4 sends, router 2 and router 3 are going to respect that as part of RIP protocol. Or to be even more granular, you can also lower the administrative distance just for that prefix if you choose, leaving the rest of them to say, hey, whatever other RIP prefixes you send me, I'm going to go ahead and treat them as 120, but I'm going to treat this specific prefix as 109, or something lower. You know, if we were doing EIGRP over here, EIGRP, which is 90, we would have to bump this down to 89, the originating prefix, to be more preferred. So that's what I've been working on tonight. It's been a couple of hours. Not a couple of hours, maybe an hour and a half, 2 hours, setting the lab up. I just did a new topology altogether, setting the lab up and working through it. And I'm tired, and that wraps it up. I'm going to bed. So tomorrow I'll likely continue with this lab and continue to explore all of the commands necessary and how to recognize it, and just getting a better feel for exactly what needs to be done. Like, I understand it in theory, but I didn't even get this far in my lab tonight. As far as I got tonight, was building the loop. That's as far as I got tonight. I built the loop. So there is a lot of documentation out there from Cisco and other vendors on these sort of mutual redistribution scenarios. I'm wondering if another way to do it isn't tagging, but maybe that's preferred over like a one-way distribution. And that would be, let's see if I could try to imagine a scenario. See, I want to explore these other scenarios as well, where maybe on router 2, we're redistributing RIP into OSPF, but on router 3, we're redistributing OSPF into RIP. You know, and sort of what will that effect have? Do we do tagging? You know, sort of how do we... Oh, I really appreciate that. I trust the process. Everything you need to know about OSPF document on my blog is helpful. I really appreciate that. That was something I put together when I was doing some deep dives into OSPF, and I was doing a lot of labs at that time that really dealt with OSPF, and I'm not even going to call them nerd knobs, because they really aren't nerd knobs. They're just making awareness of the behavior of OSPF, and I try to do it beyond a CCNA level understanding, and what that means is I think everyone at CCNA understands that, you know, there's the administrative distance is 110, you know, there's external routes and internal routes, and just try to take it just one step further to a lot of the stuff that you really need to know and focus on for sort of the CCNP level OSPF, and especially the CCIE level OSPF. 100% that document you need to memorize. And you shouldn't memorize it like note cards, like flashcards. You should memorize it like you can recognize it on the command line, like you can see it in a topology. And that's the comfort level that I'm at with OSPF now, with that particular blog post. So I'm glad you found it useful. Later, see ya, man. Thanks for joining me. So I'm going to continue my path down redistribution, and hopefully in the next couple of days I'll deal with this. I think this is called like dual one-way redistribution, right? Where there's it's only being redistributed one way at a time. So there you go. So I think the focus of this one is, right, we're taking OSPF prefixes, redistributing them into RIP, and then reintroducing them into OSPF as if they were original prefixes. So which direction will router 1 try to go is I think going to be the lesson here. We'll do that probably in a couple of days as a follow-up to what I'm doing now. Keep the same topology running. So I think that wraps it up for me for tonight, and I'll see you all tomorrow.